All right, we are back here. The holiday special rolling on this year, going into our year-end clip review where we go through some of the best moments of the podcast this year. Joining me to do that, our pop culture correspondent, Sam Derosa, is here. Sam, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on the holiday special again. I think this is the fourth year in a row you've been on. The first three, we did the holiday gifts, but in terms of timing, it's really tough because it gets out so late and people don't have time to buy the gifts. So I figured this might be a better spot for you.
Hey, I'm excited just to join. Plus, it's hard to top last year's gifts that we did together. So
No, go out on a high note.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that segment is temporarily retired, but now we're going to have some fun. We're going to go through the year in the podcast clips. I pulled a bunch of clips. We're going to take a listen, react to what's happening. Some predictions here. There's some shenanigans in here. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. I think you'll enjoy these.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, so we're going to start out at the top here. We're also going to throw out episode numbers as they pop up. So people, if you want to go back and listen to these episodes specifically, you can go ahead and do that. We're going all the way back to January of this year. It's episode 164. I talked about the Jet coaching search last year when they're looking for a coach. And I talked to one of the beat reporters, Andy Vasquez, and he actually talked about a couple of days before Robert Saleh was hired. And he actually weighed in on Coach Saleh. So here is what Andy had to say about him.
Who knows? But yeah, I think Eric Bieniemy is where he started. I think Robert Saleh, who interviewed with the Jets on Friday, is another guy who definitely has the total package in terms of charisma, leadership, has run a defense that has been one of the best in the league for the last 4 seasons. Steadily has been a big part of San Francisco improving during the time that he's been there. And this is a guy, most importantly to me, who has shown that he can overcome adversity within his unit, which if you look at these last 2 Jets coaches, that has been their downfall. Like when things got bad for Todd Bowles, when Adam Gase dealt with difficult situations, their teams never had an answer in games that mattered or in stretches of the season that mattered. And if you look at the 49ers this year, they lost their best defensive player week 2, had several other key parts in and out the whole season, and were still one of the best defenses in the league. The reason that team didn't go to the playoffs is because the injuries on offense were too much to overcome. So I think it starts with those 2 guys. Personally, I think Saleh is the better fit for the Jets, but just because I just think that is the kind of guy who's going to change the culture, that kind of personality. But there's other guys out there who have great personalities too, and strong units like Matt Eberflus with the Colts. And I think a lot of these guys that the Jets have lined up interviews with have that kind of factor. It's just some of them have been able to show it and some of them haven't.
All right. That's his take on Robert Saleh. I mean, it's a little early. I mean, he's had a rough year because the team has really no defensive talent, but he's not a disaster like Adam Gase. I guess that's progress.
Yeah. I just liked, that's so cool that he was like, yeah, he's the best candidate. And it's like, he got hired. And I love hearing those things. Like, it makes me super happy.
Yeah, and he got hired about 3 days after I did that interview. So it was actually very coincidental timing that actually worked out.
Oh my God. He's clairvoyant,
Yeah. Speaking of clairvoyant, I also spoke to the great John Jastrzemski, who I called him at the end of WFAN days before he moved on to the New York podcast that he hosts over on the Ringer. Great episode. So I talked to him after the AFC Championship game, as the Championship games got ready for the Super Bowl, and that was the Super Bowl. Remember, the Chiefs were heavily favored going in. Tampa pulled off the upset win. And I asked JJ for his thoughts on the big game. So let's go back to what he had to say about that. And this is from episode number 166.
Entire planet bet the Kansas City Chiefs in this game. Don't you?
Yeah, I feel that way.
Yeah, and because of that, I have the initial inkling of thinking that Tampa's got a legit shot in this game. And I'm going to tell you an injury that's a big deal for the Kansas City Chiefs. Eric Fisher blowing out his Achilles, their starting tackle, that is gigantic. I mean, let's not lose sleep over that. When you're going up against Shaq Barrett, when you're going up against Jason Pierre-Paul, Tampa has the weapons on defense to disrupt Mahomes. I don't know if anybody has the weapons to slow down Mahomes, but you got to get a big turnover or two. You got to get a big sack. You got to make a big play. And this defense is capable. Like, anybody's looking at this game saying it's going to be a runaway, it's going to be a shoo-in for the Chiefs, I would say not so fast. That's my like my initial thought on the game is that I think people are going to clown Kansas City, and I know how tough they are to stop. But this is not going to be some 45-14 Super Bowl. I don't buy that for a minute.
He pretty much nailed that.
Yeah, very spot on. That was really great.
Yeah, he was one of the first on that Eric Fisher injury being a big deal. Because remember, Mahomes got destroyed that game. That line was really bad.
Yeah, and for somebody who did not think Tampa Bay was going to win, I feel like he answered every single, issue that they had, like, right in your interview.
Absolutely. And now we'll go ahead. Super Bowl happens. We actually came on the podcast. We broke down the Super Bowl commercials, and we had some fun because we ripped apart one of the worst commercials in the Super Bowl. Do you remember what that was?
Yes, I'm not ready to rehear the commercial though.
Yeah, we're gonna go listen back to our take on the Oatly commercial, which famously featured the company CEO playing keyboard in the middle of a field and singing horribly. So let's go back to that one from the episode 169.
No, wow, no cow, no, wow.
I want to point this out here. This ad cost $5.5 million. They put their CEO in a cornfield playing the keyboard, singing awfully.
Although, low cal does make me a little happy. Yeah. It's still so cringeworthy.
Yeah. They paid $5.5 million to do that.
They can probably thank TikTok for making oat-based milk a thing this year.
I mean, again, you and I we could recreate this right now. We could just put a camera in a cornfield. We could just do this for about 10%, maybe 1.01% of the cost of this ad, and maybe better quality.
We do have to wait for the snow to melt, but other than that, definitely.
I mean, that's one of those, you're just sitting there, you're just scratching your head, and you're just sitting there just going, what the hell's going on out here? What are you thinking?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Hearing him sing is not going to make me want to get oat milk.
I'm glad we're on the same page, though.
Yeah. And before we move on from this one, that was definitely the worst commercial. Would you rather watch that one again or the Mint Mobile one again?
Probably the Oatly one because the other one is even worse. But fun fact for all you listeners, I actually use Oatly creamer in my coffee now, and maybe that commercial might have done something.
So you actually bought the Oatly after all that. I guess it worked.
Well, I was trying something different, trying to be good for the environment or whatever. Yeah. But I wasn't ready to relive that song, but here we are.
Here we are indeed. Let's get forward a couple of weeks. We're getting into spring training now. The baseball beat is there, and Will Anthony did not do a great job on our predictions this year. So there's no Cy Young winners, no World Series predictions like we had, but we did have some fun at the expense of one very bad baseball team, the Baltimore Orioles, and we found a fun fact about them in our spring training offseason catch-up show. So here's us talking about the Orioles, episode 171. I also want to give a demerit to the Baltimore Orioles, because I don't know if you guys saw the baseball prospectus projected standings and percentages of playoff chance of making the playoffs. They gave the Baltimore Orioles, before camp opens, a 0.0% chance of making the postseason.
Come on.
They basically said the Orioles, do not show up. Do not even bother playing these games. You have no chance of going to the playoffs.
They said the Orioles are worse than math. How mathematically they can make the playoffs, but they said they cannot.
They even gave the Pirates a 0.4% chance. The Orioles got a 0.0 on the scale from baseball prospectus.
Matt Harvey and Felix Hernandez now, so maybe in 2013 that'd be a great rotation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I checked the standings here. Baltimore went 52 and 110. So I think Baseball Prospectus nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever decide to get merch, I think you should put that on a shirt. The Orioles are worse than math or whatever he says. That should definitely go on a t-shirt if you decide to start any merch.
Yeah, the Orioles are worse than math. Definitely is his mood.
Yeah, except, I'm still a little upset as a Yankees fan after they obliterated them multiple times this past season and ruined the Yankees for, record. But it's fine, Orioles.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely touch back on the baseball a little bit, especially your Yankees. I have a few things on them coming up, but we're going to go now to the basketball here. I talked to the guys from the Sorry to Interrupt podcast, Sean Rowe, Tom, I believe you've met them once before, so. Yeah, they were fun, and we were talking about the Nets, and Sean actually had a brilliant prediction that came true on the podcast, like literally a couple of weeks after it happened. So let's go to Sean's prediction for who Brooklyn should bring in.
The guy that I have on my mind, in addition to JaVale McGee, which I don't think would take more than 2 seconds to get, is Blake Griffin. And I know people are going to kind of roll their eyes at that because we're thinking of Blake with Detroit. Well, if you can ask Blake to play 12 to 18 minutes a night, he can stretch the floor. He's a great passer. And the only issue I have with Drummond, although I would be ecstatic if the Nets got him, is he bought into taking on that DeAndre Jordan role, which is rim running, rim protecting, and hey, we're not running any plays for you. Just kind of go after it on defense and on the boards, because Blake Griffin at this point in his career doesn't have to do that. And JaVale McGee knows his role. So I think the last thing you want from this Nets team is to have somebody that's clogging up the middle. So that takes away from all the playmaking that the Nets have. So I think if you could get a JaVale McGee and a Blake Griffin on the buyout market, I think that's really all the Nets need to do.
Yeah, and he did come here. He did get bought out. He came to the Nets and he re-signed. So good call by Sean.
Yeah, man. Sean's a knowledgeable dude.
Yeah. Yeah, he broke it down perfectly. He's a big net guy, so not surprising he had the read correct on what they needed.
That's true. Fans are the best and worst critics of your team.
Yeah, and speaking of fans of things, were you a big fan of the Snyder Cut when it came out this year?
Yes and no. I just love, me and superhero movies. I love it, but that was a long one.
It was a long one. It was over 4 hours. I watched it, and another guy who watched it, the great John Stanko. And
oh no, this is gonna be a good one.
I got John Stanko's take on the Snyder Cut. We watched it, and he actually enjoyed it a bit. So let's hear how John Stanko graded the Snyder Cut on episode 182. So we jumped forward a little bit. We're into May now.
My straight opinion, Mike, is I finished it and I was like, this movie is better than it has any right to be. 4 hours, you think it's going to be a slog, and I'll be fair, I watched it in 3 different sittings because between doing work stuff and I just couldn't sit for 4 hours and do it. I believe you watched it in 2, you said.
Yeah.
But I was thoroughly impressed, thoroughly entertained. And it reminded me a lot of Watchmen, which was very long, but again, I was entertained throughout it, and I enjoyed Watchmen better than most. And this movie is better than it has any right to be. The worst part of the movie is the epilogue. Get rid of that shit, and the movie's great. And the movie is good. I gave it a B. Again, this movie is better than a lot of the comic book movies I've seen recently. It was much more self-aware. Steppenwolf was actually fleshed out as a villain, but a sub-villain, if you will. They kind of made him more human, but also kind of fleshed him out. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think the CGI was maybe a little iffy at times because they wanted to get it done. But they fleshed out the characters they needed to. The action looked really, really, really good. And they didn't dwell too much on the melodrama that plagued the first one. They made it more fun just because they piped up more action to it, and they fleshed out the characters in a very positive way.
So Stanko very, very high on the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, I was expecting a Stanko rant. You know how he gets all angry at movies and then goes on a Stanko rant.
Yeah.
I agree with him, but I was also looking forward to him ripping it apart.
To be fair, he is right. The epilogue is trash. So I think if you get rid of the epilogue, I think it's a much better product.
I agree as well. Stanko's never wrong, right?
I disagree with Stanko on occasions about things, but usually we found the scale is I usually have letter grade higher than Stanko is on things for most of the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, perfect example on Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings. I gave it a B+, he gave it a C+. So that's basically...
I'm not going to get started with that now, but...
Yeah, we did a lot of Marvel this year, but before we get back into that stuff, I want to get to the NBA. The Knicks had a very fun year. They made the playoffs. They lost the first round of the Hawks. Before that series started, I had a chance to talk to the Knicks beat reporter for the New York Post, Mark Berman, and I got his prediction to break down the series for Knicks Hawks. A little lengthy, so settle in there, but he did a pretty good job laying out exactly what happened in that series. So I'm going to give Mark Berman in full his shot here with this clip from episode 189.
Listen, I haven't put my prediction in the newspaper yet, but, I've talked to a lot of scouts, and even though the Knicks were 3-0, you can make the case that the Knicks really never faced the Hawks at full strength. The first two games, they beat them. They were 3-0. The first two games, it was when Lloyd Pierce was the head coach, and the Hawks are just a different team with Nate McMillan. They're just better defensively. Trae Young is much better, much more in control with McMillan as his coach. And then in the third game, McMillan was the coach, but Trae Young got hurt late in the third quarter, if you remember, and the Knicks were down 9 points. But Trae Young went to the bench. He went to the locker room, and the Knicks rallied to win in overtime. I believe if Trae Young didn't get hurt, the Knicks would have lost that game. The Hawks also had some injury woes earlier in the season, and I don't know if the Knicks have ever played them when the Hawks have been fully healthy with Bogey and Gallinari and DeAndre Hunter, who's a pretty good defensive player. And this is the first time for Julius Randle in the playoffs, and I'm a little worried. I mean, I think there's so much pressure on him now because everyone's looking at him as the guy to lead them to the promised land. And I'm worried, especially in game one, that, the pressure might be a little much on him. And I know Atlanta's going to have a nice defense this time for him. So if push comes to shove, I think it's going to be a very close series. And the Knicks have been so good from the three-point line. But I think when push comes to shove, I think Atlanta has just a little too much firepower for the Knicks. And I think that the Hawks are going to win it in maybe 7 games, but I think more 6 games.
He was a game off, but he basically nailed how the entire series played out.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you did get his take before he published it in the paper, so I think that's a pretty big moment.
Yeah, I mean, talking to Mark Berman was definitely a lot of fun. He had a lot of insight on that series, and he did break down a lot of factors in that interview that sort of laid out exactly why the Knicks ended up losing it. So, again, you want to go back to that. I know Knicks fans is painful, but 189 in the podcast archives. You want to check that out.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I wanted the Knicks to win, but, that's a New York thing, though.
Yeah. Speaking of episode 189, it's the only episode here that got 2 clips in the segment here, because this is also the episode we did the Marvel movie rankings, I believe you were a part of, where you sent in your list here. It's the prequel for a bigger ranking product we did later on, but we did the Marvel rankings, Alan Austin, and we had a fun list, some wild takes on some of these things, but we had a pretty clear cut of number 1. We'll go to that now. It's episode 189 with the great Alan Austin. Thor Ragnarok.
Look, it's a different feel from the rest. I understand why it's at number 1. People adore this movie. It's comedic. It's probably the funniest MCU movie. I had it at number 6. I'm a big fan of it. I think some of the Hela stuff is a little long in the tooth, a little long-winded, but you can't deny that all of the space stuff, the Jeff Goldblum stuff, the Hulk stuff, Tessa Thompson's newly introduced character in this movie, and this is Thor's best performance. You have a lot of fun Loki stuff, so this is my highest rated Loki movie. It's a really good movie, and I can't fault people for liking it the most. It's the flashiest, it's the most energetic movie. There's a lot of great music, and Taika Waititi. So, I can't fault that, and Jeff Goldblum alone is worth it being in the top 10. So I have no gripes with it. It's just my 6th. That's all.
Yeah, I think in terms of, I has number 4 is number 1 from John Stanko, number 2 from Sam, number 2 from Dan, number 1 from Nick, and number 5 from Martino. So you were the lowest at 6. So that explains a lot.
If it's the lowest at 6, that's a quality movie right there.
This is one where I feel like I love it, and it's just amazing. Look at the list. Thor's second movie is 23. It is dead last. The turnaround from that one to Ragnarok is so dramatic, and you can tell Chris Hemsworth's having so much more fun being Thor in it, and Taika Waititi saved that franchise, because I think if you're not in that movie, Chris Hemsworth is gone after his contract is up at the Endgame. Now he's re-energized, he's going to be in a couple more movies. I think this saves the franchise. Jeff Goldblum is fantastic. He's basically just being Jeff Goldblum as a villain, which I love. This is so funny. And you get Korg and Meek, who are probably fantastic sidekicks. Yeah, I love that movie, and I think it was a testament to that franchise that it ended up number 1 after all the other stuff going on our list.
Yeah, like I said, it still holds number 2. Who knows with the new Spider-Man movie coming out. But like it's so quotable and everything. Like I quote, "It's my friend from work."
Yeah.
Like it's just like Taika did an amazing job with all the characters.
Yeah, I think with that one, I think it's gonna be fun. Also, obviously, we're recording before Spider-Man No Way Home comes out, and that one feels gonna be very polarized. You're gonna love that movie, you're gonna hate it. That's the sense I gather. But I think in the future, do a little update on rankings in the future for Marvel. I think I have, of the ones I've seen so far, again, I did not go to Eternals in theaters yet because the reviews have been so bad. I'm like, I'm not gonna waste my money. So I feel from what I've seen, Shang-Chi better than Black Widow. That's where I stand on the newer ones.
Same. Yeah. I have not seen Eternals, but I agree with your rankings.
All right, let's go ahead now to Memorial Day, episode 191. I had a chat with SNY contributor Anthony McCarron, and came on a couple times a year. I was happy to talk to him, and we had some stuff to say about MLB Instant Replay. If you were a big fan of the replay system as a whole.
Am I?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, well, we're not either. So let's check out what's going on here with our thoughts on the replay system. This came, I think, right after a series the Mets had at home against Colorado, where they had a couple of guys called out for having a hand an inch off the base and get tagged for it. So we'll go listen to the replays conversation here. This is from episode 191.
But the Met game the other night, when DeGrom and VR got instant replayed out when on the bases, was kind of an interesting moment because they want more action in the game. And here's a guy stretching a single into a double. Oh, he was off the base for a nanosecond. He's out. And then the other guy, comes off the bag after stealing third. Doesn't MLB want? I thought they wanted more steals. He comes off the base for a nanosecond as well. Yeah, he's out via replay too. There's a lot going on in this game right now. Not all of it great. It's still a great game. Don't get me wrong, but there are some issues here.
Yeah, the replay thing drives me crazy. Like you said, it's like we're wasting time now, slowing the game down for nanoseconds. Oh, his foot was 2 inches off the bag for a second, and he tagged him, so he's out. That's not what the spirit replay is supposed to be. I've floated this idea online. What do you think about this? Is I think part of the problem here is that the teams themselves being able to challenge has made this an issue. I wonder maybe if it'd be better if we have sort of a skybox umpire who's there only challenging when you have blatantly wrong calls, like when the umpire calls a first baseman out when he's 3 feet off the bag or something like that.
Yeah, I'm open for anything that makes it better than it is right now, because that certainly was not the spirit of the thing. And look, fielders are taking advantage of it now too, because they know that teeny tiny window might exist, so they're keeping the tag on. Maybe giving an extra shove too. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, just suggesting that it might be there. So they're keeping the tag on, and it's a strategy, and that's going to discourage people from trying to steal bases, because you never know where that element is going to come into play.
Yeah, I think it's certainly an interesting take to discuss what's going on with the replay. And I know they're in a lockout right now. There are a whole lot of things going on here. Hopefully at some point they actually talk about, we got to fix replay.
Fix replay, fix, how things are done with replay. I think baseball is going to go through a big revolution of change, and hopefully it's going to be all for the better. And hopefully the replay is top of their list.
I don't think it's the top of their list, but they have bigger issues right now than just the replay.
Well, you know what I mean? The main meat, it's like the good cheese.
Yeah, it is the good cheese, as you put it. But we'll go on now to your team. The one Yankee club I got here is, you remember the fun we had with Garrett Cole, the sticky stuff, when Spider Attack got banned?
Yep. I remember.
Yeah, that was a big topic, especially when Garrett Cole, that really weird press conference where he couldn't we got basically dumbfounded by being asked by the reporter about whether he ever used Spider Attack. I actually talked to
with his Kermit voice.
Yep, with the Kermit voice, and I talked to Yankee reporter Brian Hoke about that time, and here's what he had to say about the Garrett Cole sticky stuff situation.
Yeah, I will never know. We'll never know. But what we do know is that magically his spin rates did increase a lot going from Pittsburgh to Houston, and he did become one of the best pitchers in the game. And I think that sticky stuff or no sticky stuff, he is one of the best pitchers in the game. But I think that it probably took him to an otherworldly level where he was, in the Cy Young conversation. And I am curious to see how he handles this. He answered it pretty well after with his actions. He did not answer it well in the Zoom room, but he did when he went on the mound, and he did shove for an outing there.
he needs to continue to do that. And, I think that if you see a massive performance drop-off, then that's going to be a smoking gun to a lot of people. So, Garrett Cole just needs to continue to go out and pitch the way he has been. He started the year, he was on fire. He's setting strikeout records in franchise history. And I was thinking, Ron Guidry's 18 strikeout game is not going to last a year. So maybe Guidry is safe now. And he can rest easy there. That 18 strikeout game will go. But I think that Garrett Cole is the kind of guy that no matter what, every time he's on the mound, you think there's a chance he might throw a no-hitter that day.
Yeah, I think it's important to see what happens to Garrett Cole in the offseason here because, you saw it clearly, and you watch the Yankees a lot. He is not the same guy as he was before the sticky stuff happened. And considering how much money they still invested in him, if he is not close to that guy, and he's just your average ace and not like a superstar, it's a big overpay.
I think there's a lot going to go on this offseason. He has all the time now with all the lockout to work on his, form and his precise, with how to grip the ball and, everything. There's so much speculation around it, but I'm sure he's going to figure it out. I think he knows that it's a serious thing that needs to be taken care of. So, good old Garrett Cole.
Yeah, he's the most important Yankee this offseason, in my opinion.
Yes, to come back for his performance opening day, definitely.
Yeah, that's episode 195. Now you go to episode 196, our next one. It's our first of 3 clips from the Sky Guys, Pete Considori, Nick Frietta, and myself. We do this throughout the year. We had podcasts where we recap seasons of Star Wars animated properties. This one comes from season 6 of Clone Wars, and it is a very interesting season on Netflix. And one very interesting development for one Jar Jar Binks, and Pete Considori was not a big fan of that one. So let's go to Pete's take on this one. Investigating a forced disappearances on Bardata. And Pete, it looks like you have some thoughts on this one.
I didn't think we can get any more, what's the word I'm looking for? Low. The Jar Jar Binks arcs. Now we got to give him a love interest. I don't get why that's a thing. It's Jar Jar freaking Binks. Who the hell loves that? Who is that's not it make all right. It's that might have been the throwaway arc of the season, right? It was only 2 episodes, 3 episodes.
2.
It kind of shows Mace Windu in action a little bit more because you don't really see him a lot, and I feel like that was a nice time to shine for him. Oh my God. Why does he have a love interest? I don't get why that's important to anything in this show. It's almost as bad as Zero the Hutt, and I don't take that lightly. I understand Zero the Hutt's horrible, but no. Just no.
Mike, I'm calling it right now. That last 40 seconds is going up on Twitter.
Yeah. Did you know that Jar Jar Binks had a love interest on Clone Wars?
No, but Pete, some people do care about Jar Jar Binks, and I am one of them. Yeah. I don't know why, but I like the guy. He's a weirdo, and I don't know why, but I'm upset that he hates Jar Jar so much.
He doesn't hate Jar Jar. He's the Jar Jar got a love interest. There's a difference.
Regardless, any hate towards Jar Jar's love interest is hate towards Jar Jar. So
yeah. And just to clarify, it's a 2-part episode arc in season 6 of Clone Wars where Jar Jar Binks teams up with Mace Windu to investigate a series of disappearances on a planet. It's definitely an interesting 2 episodes.
Interesting duo, but
Yeah, quite the opposite of style approach there, but I thought it was very funny.
No, that was hilarious.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we'll go now to episode 198. This is great predictions category here for the NBA Finals, and I had Sports Grid's Kevin Walsh on, and he gave some interesting betting advice prior to the series. So let's hear what Kevin had to say.
Giannis is plus 350 to win Finals MVP, right? If you compare that to the Bucks plus 140, price to win the title, there's a significant gap there. That when these lines were out, when Giannis was fully healthy, that gap didn't exist. If the Bucks were, let's just say the Bucks were plus 140, Giannis would be plus 150 to win Finals MVP. They would be offered at the same exact price because, the book's saying, listen, if they're going to win the title, it's going to be because of Giannis.
because of the injury, they can't put that in the same way. But like, I don't think a 70% Giannis that plays second or third fiddle to Middleton or Holiday, I don't think that team wins the finals. So I actually think the Giannis plus 350 finals MVP bet does have a little bit of juice to it.
And he did win finals MVP. So I hope if you listened and you got in on that number, you made some shekels.
Yeah, no, that was great advice.
Yeah. I always respect the great Kevin Walsh for his sports betting take. So hoping to get him back on the podcast soon, talk a little football, but definitely a very good play from him.
Yeah. I'm not a betting gal, but if I was,
yeah.
I'll have to listen to him next time.
Yeah, and now we get to the big fun stuff here. Episode 202, the good old-fashioned Star Wars movie ranking episode. Our second Sky Guys appearance. We had over 200 responses to our survey on the movies, and we talked Return of the Jedi. We talked about a very controversial addition to the special edition of the movie that George Lucas did. I'll let you listen to the take on this one, get where you weigh in after this, but this is from episode number 202. I highly recommend the Star Wars movie rankings episode. So let's listen.
I like The Force Ghost of Hayden Christensen more. Am I in the minority there or not?
I agree with that.
I prefer the older Skywalker, so I disagree with Nick and Pete.
I do.
Why do you prefer Hayden?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to.
In my opinion, that's when Anakin Skywalker died.
Yeah.
I mean, technically he was back for a little bit, but you're not going to show a guy all burnt up.
That's a good argument.
Yeah, from my opinion, though, it's like, for me, it's like Luke never saw the Hayden Christensen version, so why is he seeing him now as a Force Ghost? That's my question.
That's fair. That's fair.
I have to say, though, the continuity is a little bit off, though. If they were willing to go in and, I mean, granted what Nick said, that's when Anakin died, so that's when you see Anakin. If they were willing to go in and show a younger version of Anakin, why didn't they go in and show a younger version of Obi-Wan?
That's the thing that doesn't make fly for me, because
that continuity piece just kind of messes me up a little bit. But hearing Nick say what he said, it kind of makes sense why they go with the younger Anakin there. Maybe to also tie it into the older movies, saying like, hey, we do have a character that you haven't seen really till the very, very end, so we'll put that in. But that continuity makes me a little irked. So you're going to put the young Anakin Skywalker, but you're not going to put the young Obi-Wan.
For me, that's the problem. Is like he knew old Obi-Wan. He did not know young Anakin. He saw old man Anakin in the Darth Vader suit.
You can't put that guy in. He was all burnt up. He had scars in his head. Like, that would be terrifying for children.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he was not burnt up when they did that. They just showed the old guy wearing Jedi robes. All right, so we had a 2-2 tie on that one. Stanko and I were pro old guy Skywalker. Nick and Pete were pro Hayden Christensen Force Ghost. So where do you fall here to break the tie?
Okay, first off, did not know I was going to be a tiebreaker today. Second off, I got to go with young Anakin Skywalker for the fact that, I feel like the Force is showing, the good, not the evil. So I don't know. Now I feel like I've made a decision, and now I'm worried about my decision from you and Stanko.
Yeah, well, we just say the reason we disagree at the decision, mostly because I think in terms of the canon, like, he's going to walk over there and like, wait, who's that? Like, wait, I see Obi-Wan, I see Yoda. Who's that other guy? Like,
but it's the Force. He just feels it.
Yeah.
He knows who it is from the Force. He can recognize it. And Obi-Wan died old.
Yeah.
So, that's what he's going to see, because he's always been on the good side, basically. So
we'll agree or disagree on that one, because yeah. Now let's go ahead a little bit. We go to the start of the NFL season. I spoke to Shilka Patti of The Athletic. We did the NFL season preview, episode 209, and he was not very high on the New York Football Giants. So let's get into what his take on the Giants was here, episode 209.
Yeah, I'm not bullish on the Giants this year. I don't see them making any type of major leap. They were sort of the winners of the offseason in a way, with Kenny Galladay, Adoree Jackson, bringing back Leonard Williams. But if you look at it, their offense, they look like they have on paper a bottom 5 offensive line. They very well could have a bottom 5 play caller, offensive coordinator in Jason Garrett. And Daniel Jones has certainly flashed at times, but he has more fumbles than any other player in the NFL since entering the league. And so you add all those things up, and I think that's a lot to overcome for them to become sort of even a top 10, top 15 type offense. I just don't see that happening. And defensively, I thought Patrick Graham certainly did a good job last year maximizing the talent at his disposal. I just don't think they have a lot of talent. Certainly Leonard Williams is a very good player. They don't have a lot of edge rush. We'll see if Adoree Jackson can stay healthy. And so I think they'll be a fine defense. I would say maybe mediocre to slightly above average, but you add all those things up, and I think they're probably going to be a below 500 team.
As of recording date, they're 4-8. Jason Garrison fired. Daniel Jones might not play again this year. And Dave Gellman's probably on his way out the door. So I think this is pretty accurate.
It's pretty spot on. Poor Giants, but
they're a mess.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, my team is a mess as well, but at least we kind of know we're a mess. I don't think the Giants realize that they're a mess yet.
That is true. I mean, but I sometimes feel like the Giants, looking back, they get into a mess, but somehow they fix it, and in the next 2 seasons, go on to winning seasons. But
it's been a while.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on now to the Mets. Our first Met clip of the podcast here, and I want to start with Luis Rojas, who got himself fired after the season. They officially let him go, and I had my issues with Luis. And I had the great Mets himself, John Coppinger, on, and he shared what he thought the issue was with Luis Rojas. So let's listen in to what John had to say.
Rojas's moves have been head scratchers, serious head scratchers. And I wonder if there's going to be a new hierarchy above Rojas. Does he really have a chance to say? There's been some backlash from some media members. I won't mention who, but one in particular saying, hey, both the Mets and the Yankees need to re-sign their managers. And I think that's just that reporter being contrarian, because everybody said that Luis Rojas' strength was the handle that he had on the clubhouse. Yet when there were a lot of things that came up in the clubhouse, his answer always seemed to be, oh, I didn't know about that. Well, how do you not know about that if you're the guy that is supposedly so good at handling the clubhouse? That's why I kind of wonder what really the manager's role has evolved in, and if we're ever going to have a good manager again. And not to say that won't be good managers, but there seems to be a growing disconnect between a lot of managers and front office people, where the front office people are kind of giving the managers the blueprint. And I think what we all see with Rojas is that he sticks to the blueprint a lot. He sticks to the righty-lefty matchups, bringing in Albert Almora, hitting 118 as the last gasp of the game instead of Luis Guillorme, who's a much better hitter overall and against left-handers. Bringing in Jake Reed in the 11th inning because it's all what the script says. And managers, a thread with the last couple of managers also has been their lack of being able to explain why he made these moves. And it tells me that these managers are trying to cover up for the front office, and they're taking the bullets for the front office. Now, is that fair? I don't know. But it seems to me that a manager, the role of a manager means that they're never going to, and not just the Mets, any team. Oh, the role of the manager is just so different now. They're going to take the heat, but for somebody else's decisions. And
that basically ended up happening. Rojas gets let go, and as of recording, they're not picking a new manager yet. But it does sound like they're going in the opposite direction of what they've done the last 2 hires. So that sounds good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like both the Mets and the Yankees have a lot riding on them this coming season. If there is a season.
There's going to be a season, no matter when it starts. That's the question. Because
yeah, no, I know. But still.
I have a hard time believing that these 2 sides are willing to give up all the money from missing games and having stuff delayed. But I would not be shocked if we're getting to mid-February and we're not at a deal yet. I'm calling right now. I'm not surprised about that.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it's going to be last minute up until spring training.
Yeah. So episode 211 on that clip. Now we'll go forward a bit to episode 215, and I had a great chance to talk to Nick Davis, the director of the 30 for 30 on the 86 Mets Once Upon a Time in Queens. Fun conversation, and he had a good job getting some interesting stuff out of Lenny Dykstra, who's probably one of the most controversial members of that team, and I got his take on what it was like to interview Lenny, so let's listen to that one right now, episode 215.
It was great, and that was one of the real highlights, I have to say. It was interviewing Lenny. It was the first of the, I think it was the first of the remote interviews that we did. So I was here in New York in my office, and he was in LA. We rented a place to film him in, and had a producer on set, an LA-based producer, LA-based cameraman. everyone masked, and the Lenny Wrangler got him to the set on time, and he's being interviewed. I'm conducting the interview from my office over Zoom. They placed the laptop right next to the camera, so he's looking just off camera as he would as if I were in the room. And it was, 4 hours of just amazing, stories and profanity and hilarious stuff, but also I found very moving at times, very kind of honest. He's obviously had a challenging, difficult life, and, he doesn't make excuses for it, but he's out there. And, a number of people, when I was finished, they were like, well, was he crazy? And I was like, no, I don't think he's crazy. I think he's crazy like a fox. I think he knows what he's giving out. He knows that he's, to some extent, playing the role of Nails, and that we expect a certain kind of nuttiness from him and unfilteredness. But he's also honest and talks about, at the end of the film, the thing about, his life now, and days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, but it's okay because I won a World Series in New York City. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, I gotta say, the Lenny Dykstra parts of that film were so fun.
Yeah, I also want to know how the Lenny Wrangler got that job and what that entails, just as a follow-up for next time you interview him.
Yeah, if I get a chance to talk to him, I'll put it on my list. I ask him who the Lenny Wrangler was and how he had to make sure Lenny got there on time and what was going on in that.
Does he have to sheepdog him to go places?
Yeah, and that was in COVID. So I did that with social distancing too, so.
No, that was really creative. Everybody has to adapt to this ongoing pandemic, and I thought that was awesome.
All right, let's go ahead. One episode here, episode 216, our third and final Sky Guys clip here. And there have been some bad episodes of Star Wars shows. Rebels Season 2 had one of the worst I've ever seen. It involved this very strange concept about space whales. And Pete, obviously, we heard before, was not a big fan of Jar Jar's love interest. You can imagine how that went with the space whales. So let's go to episode 216 here on this one.
I don't really understand why we need to know they had to fight spiders and figure out, that Ezra can't talk to the spiders like they did the other episode that I'm going to put out there, which is the
space whales.
Space whales. Yeah. Yeah. Another one where I was just like, really? We're going to go there.
Yeah.
This is where we've gone in animated Star Wars world, is sea whales that can literally go the speed of light. They have their own hyperdrives, or they were the source. I love how they're like, this is where the hyperdrive was taken from. The idea, really, that's where you got the idea from, was whales, not any other flying technology. It was the whales that made you think, oh, we could go into hyperspace. That would be cool.
I'm glad you brought this. I'm glad you brought the space whales up, because that is by far the worst episode of Rebels I've seen so far. And I will again point out, this is another concept they stole from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they did it very poorly once again, because in Avatar: The Last Airbender, one of the things was they taught, when one of the mystical elements was that when people learned how to bend the elements, whereas the air, the earth, the fire, they learned from animals. So Badger Moles taught one character how to bend the earth and stuff like that, and they did it pretty cool. This was very lame. This was god-awful. We didn't need to see space whales going into light speed saying, oh, that's why we got the inspiration to make ships that could do that.
For gas.
Yeah.
The whole thing was, we're going to use the whales so we can get gas because we didn't fill up at the last station. This was the whole premise of the story or the episode. So yeah, those are my top worst episodes.
Yeah, and I gotta say, that's a low point, and the space whales do come back later on in Rebels. So.
Oh boy, what a treat! But I like how this, how Stanko usually does his rants on your year end in review. It's like Pete gets the Stanko rant award.
Yeah, Pete was frustrated a couple of things.
Just a little bit. I'm sorry, Pete, for your frustrations this year.
Yeah, and for sure. And last but not least, go back to the Giants one more time. Head coach Joe Judge has been a hot rod of late, because he has said lots of things. The team doesn't perform, and I had my good friend Justin Diaz on, noted ranter, and he was not happy with the idea that the Giants calling card is going to be disciplined. So let's listen to the final clip of the countdown from episode 224.
Mistakes. Yes, your team could be disciplined as a whole, but if someone jumps off sides because the quarterback had a good hard count, it's a bad play by the player. It's a good play by the quarterback. Unless you have a repeat offender, then a lot of times it comes down to luck of the draw in my mind. So if a coach's calling card is discipline, that's not going to be a good coach more than likely. When was the last team that you said this team disciplines their way to the Super Bowl? Never. They had a great offense, or they had a great defense, or maybe they had good at both, or they had a great quarterback. There's never been, oh yeah, the Patriots of 2001 were just a great disciplined team. No, they had a great freaking defense. Or the Chiefs from 2 years ago, historically good offense. The Bucks last year, there's a well-rounded team. No one's ever said, yeah, this team's, I like their chances in the Super Bowl because they don't commit a lot of penalties and they try hard. It's bullshit. It's just this old school football mentality. It fits perfectly with what the Giants want and what their fan base wants. Old school, punch them in the mouth, run the football. We stink. It's freaking Groundhog's Day with this team. Just backwards thinking, hustling backwards. We're never innovative. We don't think forward. We wait until we give every player and coach we ever get every excuse under the book, rather than just look at them critically and saying, you know what, maybe they do have excuses, but at the same time, on the flip side, they haven't shown us anything to prove that they're actually good.
I think everyone's nailed it.
Yeah, basically.
I will say, though, the line that no team ever disciplined their way to the Super Bowl got me laughing so hard in the moment. It still gets me funny laugh to this day.
No, that's so, I mean, he makes a very valid point. You don't describe it as a disciplined team.
Yeah. I wanted to, too bad my team can't discipline its way to the Super Bowl.
Neither can mine, if it makes you feel any better. And the best part was the Jaguars mascot, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, got stuck. And then that was that's the defining moment of the Jaguars season.
Yeah, and there we have it. Those are clips from 2021. Sam, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, I had a blast. Thanks for having me.
Before I let you go, can you follow on social media and keep up some of the stuff you're up to?
Yeah, I'm gonna be the old new person. You can follow me on TikTok at Sam in Sports, or Instagram or Twitter at SDEROS5.
All right, Sam, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.